This is a podcast from Rover.
Welcome to Parents We've Met, where we chat about the mess and magic of parenting. Today on the couch, we have 1/3 of the Edge Radio Breakfast team. He's a dad, a husband, and I reckon one of the most hardworking guys in New Zealand media. I'm talking about you, Clint Randell.
Okay, right. I was wondering right up until that last bit.
Oh, you are though, because I was thinking about it. You came onto the TV screens way back in 2006 as a contestant on New Zealand Idol.
I was going to say, you've done the research, so I'm going to assume that date's right. But yeah, that was 18 years ago.
Because you came on Studio 2 after that, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then from there, I keep thinking you were a presenter on Just the Job, Let's Get Inventing, Dancing with the Stars, Masked Singer, Heartbreak Island.
Yeah, I went and lived in Fiji for 7 weeks. That was fun.
And then, you've got your whole radio host side as well, Life FM, My FM, and now The Edge. Did you have a bit of a vision of where you were going, like saying yes to all these things, or were you just saying yes and going, let's see where this leads?
Yeah, I think I've always just been someone who will say yes to more things than I say no to, because I think every time you say yes to something, it leads to something else. And I can deal with saying yes to something and it being something I shouldn't have done, then not doing it and it eating away at me for the rest of my life, wondering what it would have been like had I done that thing. Which is why I ended up walking away from radio to do Heartbreak Island that year, because I couldn't do both opportunities. And I was like, I've done radio for a long time, and if I don't go and do this, I'll always wonder if that opportunity could have sparked another opportunity that takes my life on a completely different direction. And in the end, I did get to do both, because now I'm back doing radio again, and New Zealand isn't making any more television. So
True. Hey, did having me as your peer support leader at the start of high school, is that what really set you up for success?
Yes,
is that where it started?
Got that in my notes, yes, of the people to thank. You're right at the top, Dana. Yeah, that's probably showing your age, because I would have been third form and you would have been 7.
I was leaving and you were starting.
Yeah.
Oh, it is showing my age. Let's move on from that then, eh? Hey, Jenny, why don't you come in here?
We always love to chat about the makeup of your family, Clint, so we'd love to hear who is in your tribe.
Okay, so my wife and I have been married 15 years, and the reason why I pause is because normally I work out how long I've been married based on how old my dog is, because we got him as a wedding gift, but he passed away last year. So he was part of the tribe, and we have a daughter who's 7. Daughter who's 9. I don't want to be one of those dads, and a son who's 7. So I got one of each. So I was very, very lucky. And I thought I always wanted to have boys. And then when I had a girl, I was like, oh, okay. And was like, not deflated by it, but I was like, all right, it wasn't my initial choice. Now, every time I have friends who are having kids, they're like, oh, I hope it's a boy. I was like, that's what you think, but I swear to God, if you have a girl, it will be the best ride of your life. It's a real experience and a different way of parenting than I ever thought I would, parenting to a daughter than to a son, because they are so different. Mm-hmm. But I'm just really thankful I get to parent both.
Yeah, I love it too. We've got one of each, and same with the grandchildren. You start really early in the morning, so I'm just wondering whether you get to bed before the kids go to bed, or how do you do the...
Do they put you to bed?
That does happen with my daughter now. It used to be they'd be in bed 7 o'clock, and so I'd have an hour and a half to myself, my wife and I, before I'd be in bed 8:30. He still goes to bed at 7, my youngest one, but my daughter is now 8 o'clock, which pushes 8:30, and so it is kind of like that sometimes where I'm like, hey, if you're not in bed in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to bed and you can say goodnight to me, which she doesn't like. She likes when I go to her bed and kiss her goodnight. So if she has pushed the boat out too far with her bedtime, then unfortunately the consequences, she tucks me in, says goodnight to me, and I tell her my high-low buffalo, and then I go to sleep.
I love it. So what time are you waking up? Like, what does that morning look like for you?
My alarm goes off at 4. I snooze till 10 past. If I'm feeling a little edgy, and then I'll do like the shower, pick my outfit in the morning because I'm not organised enough to sort it out the night before. So I'll be there with my torch, try not to wake up my wife and my wardrobe, and then try not to get dressed inside out. And then I will like spend a bit of time in the morning. I'll make a coffee. I'll make like an omelette. Like I'll always do a cooked breakfast. So I'll like sit down and have that time. And sometimes if I'm a little too noisy, my kids, normally my daughter will wake up, which I feel bad about, but then I also get like that time, which is 99% of the time just me, and she'll come give me a hug, and I'm like, right, you need to go back to bed because if you're up at 4:30, Mum will kill me. And then I'm at work by about 5, and then we sort of get away about midday. So you don't really ever switch off, which I'm trying to get better as a dad, and it's something I've promised my kids and also myself, that I'm going to have a time where I put the phone down and I actually switch off. And if I'm home, I'm home, because I think I used to let it just bleed through. So I wasn't really focused on work and I wasn't really focused on parenting. I was kind of doing both at the same time, poorly. So sometimes I will just like pull over on the side of the road if it's after 3, and I'll go and check emails for like 30 minutes before I get in the driveway, because otherwise I know it's going to take more than 30 minutes if I'm trying to juggle it amongst their stuff.
Yeah.
The early mornings, even after more than 10 years of doing it, I still don't love. I remind myself each morning, I'm like, I get to do school pickup and I get to take my daughter to dance class and things in the afternoon that most dads will miss out on if they're 9 to 5s, you know?
We chatted with your sister-in-law, Rebecca, recently, and after that chat, we have all become fans of Bevan. Is he as cool and wonderful as she makes out him to be?
Yeah, he is. It's funny because he's like the guy who can fix anything, right? I feel like my dad's like that as well. Like he was holding DIY classes when we were kids, but I was unaware of them and I was asleep or something, because we are so different in that respect. He hates being filmed. So if you're ever doing an Insta story or something and the camera pans around, you'll see this head just go, like just dip out of the shot because he doesn't want to be in it. But yeah, he's really, really awesome. And seeing him as a dad as well for the first time has been really cool, because him being an uncle for the first time to my 2 kids, he loves winding them up. And I think he wound up my daughter so much when she was younger that she didn't really like Uncle Bevan. And he would get really like quite sensitive about it and be like, oh, she doesn't like me. And I'm like, well, it's just because you're really pushing like the boundaries of what a 4 or 5-year-old thinks is funny. And I think now that she's a bit more mature and she's a lot older, he's been able to play in that space and win more often than he loses now with her. And so they have a really cool relationship, because she's like, no, she'll say to Ty, don't listen to Uncle Bevan. He's just winding you up. You know, she knows. So it'd be really interesting to see how that parenting style plays out in his own life with his own daughter. But I think that type of parenting style, which we kind of relate to, is like try to make everything more fun and try to make things a competition. And you do that stuff with your kids, then I think they really like love the mundane becoming really exciting and important, you know? So
You say that he kind of dips out of like the Instagram reels and stuff, but I feel like you kind of use him in some of your content, because I remember maybe a couple of Christmases ago, you gave Jamie a vacuum and he gave Rebecca diamond earrings. I mean, was that set up? Is that like a little, were you hamming it up?
No,
that was just
I thought in that moment he was proposing, because it was the diamond earrings were in this tiny little box. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to propose. So when he pulls out the diamond earrings and I realized, oh no, it's just a really expensive gift. I mean, my wife wanted the stick vacuum. So I was like, babe, I'm going to get you the best stick vacuum there is. And she was like proper fizzing it. And then my brother did that. And I was like, cool, bro. But he's always being like a really expensive gift guy. Maybe I'm more of a practical guy. I think he bought like an ex-girlfriend, like the latest iPhone at the time, cost him like over $1,000. They've been dating like 3 weeks. And I was like, your relationship won't even last New Year's. And sadly, I was right. But he's just being like that type of guy. So we are very different in a lot of respects. But yeah, I copped a lot of heat for that one, online and on air. But my wife still to this day was like, that's what I wanted. So I'm like, you're my person.
Yeah, I would love a stick vacuum.
Right?
Yeah, I could really get excited. Yeah, Dana and I think you and Bevan are really lovely guys, and we're just wondering what was set up for you with your parents' marriage and what they communicated to you.
Yeah, I honestly think that's probably why my brother and I have really successful marriages and relationships with our kids. And I probably took it for granted for a long, long time, and I've only now realized with people in my life who have troubled relationships with their parents and stuff like that, how much of a privilege it probably was, and how rare it is to have parents who are celebrating like 40 years married still, 40 plus, whatever it is. I'm now very aware of that, and I make that very clear. Like whenever mum and dad have like an anniversary, or if we have our anniversary, it's always very much like thanks to mum and dad for the example they set. And even though sometimes it would be a little bit gross, but it would always be great for radio content. Like I remember coming home and I was like, what the heck? Like Mum normally puts all the washing on a clothes horse, and she's very like particular, and the house is really tidy. But there's like washing all over the lounge and all over the floor, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" And I'm hearing Mum and Dad laughing and giggling, and it wasn't very long before I realized like the Bee Gees are on or something, and there's candles. I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, and what we'd walked in on, and I remember stuff like that being like so gross. But then also, like, you realize that those memories, if you can get past the grossness of your parents still having an intimate relationship, is that it's actually really quite cool that your parents at that age are still really in love with each other and making that time. And I think whether we knew it or not, it sets an example for us and it influences the way that we now, I was going to say, spoil our wives, but off the back of the vacuum cleaner chat, people may disagree.
And what about the parenting stuff? What's come through from how you were parented to how, I mean, we tend to take some things, leave some things, but what do you think you've actually transferred into the way you parent?
People who I know grew up in the most strict types of households, some of my loosest friends, and some of the stuff they get up to now, I'm just like, wow, that's so 180 from the way I remember you being brought up in school. And so there's probably this fear of being a little too strict. I also don't want to be too loosey-goosey with the kids, but we have a rule in our house where you never get in trouble for telling the truth. And it's a hard thing to stick by, because if I ask them something and they know now if they just tell me the truth and what they did, I have to like bite my tongue and not blow up at them, because I know as soon as I do, they're just going to start hiding it from me. And the last thing I want is my kids to hide things from me because they don't want to get in trouble, because they know they're hiding the things that they shouldn't be doing. So in those moments, I've learned to be like, okay, cool, well, you don't get in trouble. You told me the truth. Then the next day or later on that night is when you can go back and go, hey, you know, that thing we talked about, you're not in trouble about it, but I just want to discuss why maybe tomorrow and in the future we don't do those things. And this is why we don't do them. And you can have that moment, but you don't have the reaction in the time that they've confided in you truthfully. And so if you're going to have that rule in your house, it's a tricky one, but if you're going to do it, you have to really commit to it. Otherwise, it's just never going to work. And I just don't want my kids keeping secrets from me.
Yeah. You and Jamie, 15 years. I feel like I want to go back to that because that's a real milestone. What do you think's been the glue that's kept you together in such a strong team?
She's very easygoing, like super easygoing. I think when people find out some of the things that I do and say and whatever, they're like, geez, you're so lucky. You're so lucky you've got Jamie. So I probably am starting to realize how chill she is. But also I guess it's just like a real commitment to staying in it. Like, it's probably not the space to talk about in radio because you're always trying to uplift and stuff and all the rest of it. And we are unbelievably honest and we share a lot of our lives. But say more of the tricky side of things in terms of a marriage, there's always going to be times when it's up and down. And I think the times when it's really tough of when you've got a toddler and a newborn. Like our daughter was 9 months old when Jay's like, I'm pregnant again. It took us about 1.5 years to get pregnant the first time. So we thought, well, she's 9 months old and takes another 1.5 years. They'll be 3 years apart. And the second one, no, it didn't happen like the first. So when you've got, say, a 2-year-old and then a baby, I think the mistake we made is that we invested 100% of all of our time into the kids, and we didn't reserve any of that for our relationship. And I've realized now through a lot of videos that I've watched on Instagram, a lot of pages I follow, there's no greater gift you can give your kids than an incredible marriage that they can witness their entire lives as they grow up, in terms of how mum should treat dad and how a husband treats their wife and those sorts of things. And we just didn't really reserve enough time, I think, when they were young. And so we went through a real rough patch, postnatal depression, my wife's talked about in some places. And we had a really rough time where we were like discussing our marriage, what we were going to do going forward, and like really tough conversations. And I said to her, I know what your greatest fear is. And I said, your greatest fear is that I'll leave. And she goes, no, it's not. My greatest fear is that you want to leave, but you're going to stay anyway. And I was like, ooh, well, that was heavy because I was like, that's exactly what I was doing. At the time, it was like, I didn't want to see my kids every second weekend, like some dads do if you're in a home where you haven't been able to work it out and now you're co-parenting. And I want to see my kids every day. I knew that there was no way that they would benefit from having mum and dad separated, even though I'm sure that's probably what parents tell themselves when they separate, that, oh, it'll be great, they'll have 2 homes. There's probably got to be a lot of pros that do come with that, I'm sure. But I was like, in our personal situation, because I can't speak for anyone else's, I just know they're going to benefit from having mum and dad in the house together, raising them together. But we can't do it if we're going to be at each other or if we're going not to display what I was talking about before. So I think I think we both do, my wife and I both have our kids to thank for the fact that we are still married and we got through that really difficult time when our kids were young, and we're unbelievably better off for it. And the kids probably won't realize that until they're much older. And so when I have friends now who have young kids and I know they're in it, whether they'll admit it or not, it's like, hey, how's your marriage going? How's your relationship? And it's not a question that we probably ask parents of young kids often enough. And my advice to them is always make sure you're saving some of your effort and your time for your marriage. Because you put it on the back burner for 2 or 3 years, and then when you try and put it back on, you don't even know who you are anymore because you're so different.
Yeah.
So that was a really long answer for a
good.
short question.
That's good.
Do you work in radio?
I know when I interview people, I'm like, oh, why can't they just answer the question quickly because I've got lots of questions and I'm running out of time.
This is payback. I totally forgot about this until preparing for our chat today, but you had another radio announcer, Dom Harvey, come to the birth of your son. Was it Ty's birth?
Yeah.
I felt like I was dreaming that when I read it again. I was like, what? And he didn't even cut the umbilical cord?
He did, yeah.
What was that about? Come on.
So him and JJ, it had been very well documented over the years that they couldn't have their own kids. So he had a lot of questions about like what it's like in the birthing suite and things. And I was answering them all, but then realized, I was like, oh, have you never been in a birthing suite before? And realized no, and unless your sister or your brother or someone or your best friend's going to invite you into that really intimate moment, and then of course most people who don't have kids have never been through it. So again, sharing all parts of your life in radio, it became like a bit of a thing. And we were kind of joking about it because my wife was planning having a water birth and he was like, I've got a snorkel. And like, there's all these jokes on air about it. But it got to a point where we were like, are we actually doing this? And then I had to obviously talk to my wife about it because it was 100% her decision. And my wife was like, if it's a genuine want and desire to witness the birth of a child and it's not 50% that and 50% radio shtick, then she's like, then I'd consider it. But I'm not doing it if it's just a radio bit. Like, that's a really personal thing. And I was like, yeah, cool. We don't even have to record anything in during the time. Like, if it's just a thing for a friend. So she ended up coming in, and her and Dom ended up having a candid chat off air. I don't know what happened during that chat, but I guess my wife was probably just sounding him out of whether he was genuine about it or not, which he was. And so I guess it was a gift that we felt we could give to him that was really important to him. And so we had a lot of laughs along the way, but it was very important to kind of keep reminding people who listen to the radio that it was actually for that reason and that reason alone. And so we had too much fun in the beginning. We got on the laughing gas and we were having a great time, Dom and I. And that's when we realized, when my wife was like, oi, enough. We were like, okay. And then we all found roles to play. See, I know what you think. I told you, I'm lucky I'm married to Jamie, because anyone else.
This is next level.
He was racing off and getting the wet flannel, and I was holding the hand. So we had our jobs and stuff. But in the moment when Ty was actually born, and I asked him if he wanted to cut the cord, and he was like, no, shouldn't the dad do that? And I was like, oh, well, I've done it once with my daughter. You realize in those moments, that's when the joke sort of slipped away, and it was like a really genuine, like, moment of him witnessing something that no one else was going to give him and that he had never experienced before. So it was a thing as a friend that you could give someone in that moment, which
that is a next level gift. I've never ever heard of anything like that. Yeah. And I know there was a lot of laughs and stuff, but I did actually remember Dom talking about it after, and he held it like it really sacred.
Yeah, and they'd gone through round and round of IVF and all the different things, and then adoption and all sorts of stuff. And it was like, if you actually know their full story, it's so heartbreaking that if this could mend any of that, it was worth doing.
So on the Edge Breakfast Show, all three of you are parents. So how's that influenced the show?
Yeah, I think it definitely has changed it. It can't not change it. It's fun though because we're all in very different stages. And so you've got content like that you can bring on air where you can have a bit of laugh about your kids as they're growing and getting older and they've got boyfriends and girlfriends. My little boy, he's got a girlfriend. She's 2 years older than him. She's 9, he's 7. And she's got red hair. Well, orange hair, he says. And he because I said to him one night before I went to bed, what do you like about this girl? And he goes, I like that she's really kind to other people. And I was like, oh, what else? And he goes, and she has orange hair. And I don't know if you know, Dad, but not many girls have orange hair. So she's like a rare Pokemon to him or something. And so there's all these stories you can bring on here, which is great. And I think you had a certain type of audience with that. But then Meg's got a 3-year-old and Dan's got like a 6-month-old. So we're all in very different stages and we can bring really fun content, I think, with that. But it also, I think it also very much shapes who we are and who people are perceiving us to be. So sometimes I guess I can be a little edgy with things I do and say, but then I've got this whole but he's a dad of 2 that I can fall back on. So I can I almost have license to do things and get away with things that I think if I was just a guy with no kids, that it almost reads different. The script reads different if you don't know the backstory and what shapes us.
Hey, we chatted with Richie Hardcore about masculinity and how as a society we need to allow guys to have more room to be themselves. And I was thinking about you because you're someone who loves trying new styles, colouring your hair, and I'm sure you've got a wardrobe that matches Jamie's. Well, where did your enjoyment of fashion come from?
Well, my wife studied fashion design, but I always just liked being different. So it's funny. So we ended up giving band T-shirts at work the other day. So I went and cut the sleeves off mine because I thought I'd probably wear it more and it'd be more fun than a box tee. And then had some fly fishing vest on yesterday and like a camo cap that my daughter bought me for Father's Day. She bought me leather pants the year before, which I love. And so it's funny, the guys at work are like, oh, I wish I could wear that. I wish I could pull that off. I was like, you actually can. You're just not willing to go through the teething process, so to speak, of everyone giving you stick about it. Because people will still give me stick about things I wear. I just don't care. So I will push through it, and eventually people stop giving you stick about it because they don't get a reaction, right? Because I'm like, I don't care, I like it, so I want to wear it, and it's different. I love a sale rack because a sale rack is generally the things that didn't sell because they're a little bit too out there. Most people don't want to wear them. And so my son, well, definitely my daughter is now very much like that. Like some of the stuff she wears, like I feel like so plain with what I'm wearing in comparison to some of the stuff, but I love it because she almost has that same thing that I do where she just doesn't care, not what people think about who she is as a person. I can definitely see that coming through. But when it comes to her fashion and stuff, she doesn't care if people are going to be like, what are you wearing that for? Or that jacket. Or she saw a girl in the mall the other day. She had some crazy thing on. She had like a tail. And my daughter, I just saw her eyes just staring. And I was like, don't even think about it. Like, I don't even know where I'd buy you a tail. But I just love that kids, I think nowadays, especially with social media, you just see it coming through more and more and more, desperate for the approval of their peers. So I think if I can bring up a really strong daughter as a sense of who she is and what she's worth, then she's going to just be on the front foot with like everything else. And I think weirdly, it's like fashion is one of those things where it doesn't seem that important, but if she can go to school wearing whatever she likes and doesn't care what people think, it probably is a nice starting point for having her be that type of person when she grows up. If she's really sure of what she wants and she likes it, then she's doing it for her. She's not doing it for anybody else. So it doesn't matter if she doesn't get that response or that validation from her peers that what she's wearing is cool or not. You know?
Hey, I joke now that family holidays are more family relocations. And I read you went to America and everyone got knits except for you.
The knits was the tip of the iceberg.
It feels like my worst nightmare. I mean, knits, my kids have never had knits, but to be on holiday and to have knits just seems crazy. I mean, how do you guys handle life's curveballs like that?
Well, that trip, that was like the 5th curveball. So we went to go see my sister-in-law get married. And while we're there in Miami, we're like, let's jump on a cruise because they're dirt cheap. It's the cost is normally getting to them from New Zealand. So we jumped on the cruise. Long story short, we all got influenza B. We thought it was COVID. I got it first and was feeling pretty dusty, ziplining through the forest going, I feel real, like awful. And then slowly everyone started getting it. We got off the cruise and we had planned a trip to Disneyland after the wedding. And my wife ended up getting a lung infection off the back of the influenza. We found out later on it was pneumonia. So she spent 3 days of the 5 we were supposed to spend in Disneyland getting sicker and sicker in the hotel. And I remember I said, I'll take the kids, and they're still recovering from influenza because I got it first, so they were delayed. And I remember taking them, and I had this view of them with the Mickey Mouse ears, and we were all going to go through and be like, oh my God, we're here. And instead, my wife wasn't there. Kids and I, the parade had just started and the rain started drizzling and then it started getting harder and the kids didn't have ponchos and then they started crying. And Cam was like, I want to go home. And I was just like, oh my God.
It's so magical.
Oh yeah, the happiest place on earth. And so I realized I was trying to do too much and I was trying to make it fun even though it wasn't. And so we just watched Bluey in the hotel for like 3 days. Great show though, by the way. Some really great messages. And so then off the back of that, Jay started getting a little better. So I was pushing her around Universal Studios in a wheelchair. And I don't know if she got the lice first, but because the kids were like, we don't want to walk, we're tired because Disneyland's a big place, they were sitting on her knee, like on the wheelchair. So I'm pushing all 3 of them around in this wheelchair. And then Jamie's like itching, checks her here, and then she checks her and she goes, we've all got lice. We've all got lice. I was like, we can't have lice. We've just had influenza and pneumonia. And we also spent like a whole day till like 3 a.m. in the morning at a hospital and racked up like a $15,000 bill over there, like at a hospital on a drip. Like it was just awful. The whole trip was pretty bad. And so I think I bleached my hair so often, the lice wanted nothing to do with my head. And I think it's just, I probably realized in those moments, like, yeah, she's getting itchy. It's like, I'm always trying to bring the fun. So I'm like, what can we do to make this fun? And sometimes you just realize there is no fun to be had in those moments where your kids got diarrhea, the kids have all got nits, Jay's still recovering from pneumonia, and you go, it's just, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's okay to just go, this is actually awful. And we'll just chuck another episode of Bluey on. But yeah, when you've been building towards what was going to be the most incredible trip you've ever taken your family on.
That's so hard. Yeah, it is hard to let our dreams just die and accept that it's going to be tough stuff for a while.
Yeah.
You might have covered this, but there is mess and magic in parenting. So aside from the nits and the sickness, would you be able to tell us what's messy, what's going really well?
The messy stuff, well, it's not messy yet, but I worry that it could get messy. And you might be able to speak into this a little bit, is children and social media and having like kids who you are opening up to the world. And I have friends who definitely don't want their kids on social media and they won't post a photo unless it's maybe the back of the head or something, right? Whereas I grew up in a world where all of a sudden, like when we had kids and they were young, like 10 years ago, Women's Day, first thing I want to do is get an article out and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, well, it's good to, in, I guess, my line of work, to try and be out there and in the public eye. And also I was always a big believer of like, my kids are the thing I'm most proud of in my entire life. Why would I not want to show them off? Like if I can't show them off on my social media, there's 75% of my life I'm not exposing. Not that I have to, but I guess in my job, I'm probably forced to expose a little more than most. We are putting certain things in place to protect our kids in that space. But I do worry that sometimes my daughter at age 9 is a train that is moving very quickly, that I'm going to want to, I'm filming and enjoying like filming her journey. But then when I put the phone away, I'm not going to be able to, I'm not fast enough to continue this weird metaphor to jump back on the train and it's going to leave me behind. And then it's like, well, it's my fault because I stoked the train and made it that fast. So how do you pump the brakes on something that's harmless now, but could definitely be harmful in 3-4 years if I don't work out how to get a handle on it.
I've loved hearing how you have conversations and there aren't secrets in your family. And I think there's some really strong anchors that we can have with our kids where you are making sure that they'll talk to you about anything and everything. I also think in parenting that sometimes things do go out a bit far beyond our control. And I also believe that we have every right, and it is our responsibility to every now and then rein it in and say, look, this has gone a bit far. We're just going to make an adjustment here. So rather than think, yeah, it's all gone and there's nothing we can do, because often parents will say, well, look, it's just sort of the era we're in. I actually think we should stay on board all the time, stay in the arena, make some adjustments along the way and keep those anchors. You mentioned a really good anchor before around raising a daughter who knows that her worth isn't tied to how she looks. And that's a really important one to just keep in mind, that so that she doesn't attach all her esteem to what people are liking about her.
Yeah.
So those are...
Which is social media.
Yeah, those are big rocks to keep in place.
Because when you are starting to create content and, like social media, did you and Jamie sit down and have a bit of a discussion at that point of what was on the table and off the table, or sort of boundaries? We
didn't in the beginning, and I feel like halfway through we've sort of, we're trying to like move the goalposts when they're already in the ground, which is always harder. But it's a really tricky one for us in the sense that some of the most incredible trips that we've been able to like go on, like Samoa Tourism invited us to go over to Samoa, and we went over to Gold Coast, and all of a sudden they're flying us around in helicopters and, like swimming with dolphins, which something that I've always wanted to do as a kid, never got to, and now I'm able to give things to my kids. But it comes at the price of obviously filming these things and effectively sharing them and advertising them to your followers. So if you're not prepared to open up that side of your life anymore, then those opportunities that I'm also able to give my kids that are incredible things that we have experienced as a family also dry up. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword. Sometimes you got to take the good with the bad, and I guess it's weighing up whether the good is more than the bad, or whether there's more bad than good in certain situations and opportunities.
Awesome. And the magic in the parenting right now?
I think those magic moments of little things that we have taken on, like when I get home, my wife always gets the first kiss. So if I get home and the kids will come running in and they're like, no, we want that. It's become a thing now, because I literally saw it online where someone was like, when you come home, there was this experiment, you wouldn't have seen it, Dan, it was on TikTok. And it showed when the dad came home, there was a kid playing, drawing or whatever, and they turned, saw dad, and the mum was in the kitchen and just kind of was like, hey, and the kid just went back to doing what they're doing, right? Because kids see and then they mimic. And so when the dad came home the next day, the mum left the kitchen and went and gave her a hug. And then so the baby was like, oh, and so the baby made the toddler to the front door. And then it was like day 3. And then he came home and she was like, he made a big song and dance. And obviously every day it got more and more intense, the reaction from the mum, to the point where it was day 7. And it was like, according to TikTok, in this video, it was only a week before the kid was waiting at the door, jumping up and down for dad. And I was like, man, that's cool. And it just shows how my relationship with my wife and hers with me, how important that is, and how much the kids are actually taking in and seeing. So I'll be like, all right, my wife gets the first kiss, and now the kids will jump in, and they're hanging off me. I'm like, no, and like trying to get to mum to give them the first kiss. And occasionally they might get it. And so it's making everything fun and a game. And that's kind of, we're in that sweet spot because they're 7 and 9. And it is a really fun age. Like, it's probably been the most fun I've had parenting. You can have some really serious adult conversations with your kids at 9, but they are also still kids, and you can have a lot of like fun with them as well.
Working in media, I'm sure there are many videos of you out there, doing all sorts of stuff. Oh. And you've learned that once they're out there for good. What are you teaching your kids around being safe online and those sorts of things?
So, gosh, I haven't even really thought too much about what conversation I have to have with my daughter. And she goes, why did you do that? I was like, oh, because Dad was desperate to pay the mortgage and it was a real big opportunity to join a number one breakfast show. Probably can't give her the honest answer. But I remember I did some work with Spark, like a collab, and the collab was on like phone safety. And I saw it as a real opportunity rather than come up with something gimmicky and like fun and some sort of bit that might get reshared a whole lot. Actually just doing a really honest piece to cam and saying, hey, my family and I create a lot of like fun videos and we take the mickey a lot and whatever, but I wanted to talk about something that's really serious. And I know some of you, as soon as you've heard that, you're already gone, you've already swiped away, but it's really important to me. And it was about, they rolled something out with like phone safety and all the things you can talk to your kids about with like online trolls. And it was talking about like why we have a passcode on our phone and different things that we take photos and videos of. And it was probably the first time that I sat down with this resource that had already been made for me, thankfully, where I could actually go through, and I probably couldn't share all 12 with her. I think there were 12, because she wasn't at an age where they didn't all apply. But I was definitely able to go through some of them with her because she's desperate for a phone. As to why sometimes if she is on my phone playing a game or doing something, why I don't like her just to leave and go and be on my phone in her bedroom, where all of a sudden the algorithm on TikTok might be harmless, and then when you scroll, the next one may not be the same type of content you were consuming in the first one. And so we've had a lot more of those conversations, and she doesn't like that we want to know. And we have like YouTube Kids, but then I find her just jumping on the normal YouTube because there'll be certain YouTubers that she likes that create pretty harmless, fun content, but they're not on YouTube Kids. So she's now moving into those like platforms. So it's, I think, a conversation that has been had, but is definitely at her age now. This is probably a nice reminder for me as well that I need to talk to my wife about how we now have those mature conversations with her, because I think she is at an age where she can understand what we're talking about in regards to social media and the harmful stuff that can come from it. But it maybe like ties 7, whether I would have those conversations with him at 7 or 8, whereas 9 does feel like, all right, I need to start having the conversation now if I haven't maybe already. Like, what age would you normally chat with kids about the dangers of social media and how to guard themselves without scaring them in regards to, say, social media that they see as this harmless, fun thing, and you don't want to scare them into freaking out about it either if it hasn't even crossed their mind as a concern?
Yeah, we probably consider it starting quite young, but probably starting in a really little conversations, not the 9 points, but you might open up with the first and second thing that you want to talk about. And then you also tune into who you're parenting, because you might find between your kids that they're quite different. One's sort of interested, one's not that interested. So you kind of work with the age and stage rather than chronological. But yeah, I'd keep it really small conversations, and also being prepared to every now and then say, you know what, we've done some talking, Mum and I've done some talking, and we're not sure about this now, so we're going to do this. Or, you can do a U-turn, or you can change something that you've had going on. Or what I've loved about hearing from you is the ongoing conversations that you keep open to your kids. And I think that where there is a freedom for there not to be secrets, where the door is kept open, where lots of the technology is out in the open, you can do the odd reset, you can check in with what others are doing, but you can also let your kids know we're not necessarily following the drumbeat of every other family. Because sometimes we want to sort of, well, that's what they're doing. And I'd also say to parents, I think we should form more of a tribe amongst ourselves, because we make it hard for each other when parents are offering things really, really early, and our kids then are just pushed by the peer pressure. Whereas I'd love to see a bit more pressure amongst parents who've banded together to give their kids that sort of safety net that other parents are delaying something as well. One day, Cameron and Ty are going to leave home. They're going to go on their own adventures. and they're going to draw from the things that you and Jamie have put in. What do you hope that your kids will take with them on their next big adventures when it's time for them to leave home?
I'd like them to be like really independent kids that are quite sure of what they want from life and what they don't want from life. And I just want them to be like really good people. That's why I really loved when I asked my son about the girl he was crushing on, what he liked about her. And the first thing he said was that she's really nice to other people. And I'm like, cool, okay, some of the things we're doing are sticking, where you just, I guess kids, if they want to, as they get older, if they want to go to uni and study other things and get smarter and all the rest of it, and you hope that your kids will be intelligent and they'll listen to the teacher and all those things. But really, I suppose the things that I want to teach is just to be really like good humans that contribute to society, that a lot of other kids, or as they get older, will consider my kids their best friends. So there'll be a lot of people that think that they're their best friend because they are just that type of person. And so they are so different in their own ways, Ty and Cam, like so different. But yeah, I think it's just, you want them to be kids that are able to choose the life that they want to choose because we've given them the opportunity to do that without doing everything for them, so that these spoiled little rich kids, they are almost the opposite of that, and they're useless and they can't do anything because mum and dad have always done it. When they leave the nest, they don't know how to do anything. So that's a juggling act for us at the moment. How can we give our kids everything that we didn't have and everything that we're able to give them, whilst not doing it in a way that when you push them out of the nest, they just go, you go, damn it, I really thought they could fly by now. She's 25.
There was a lot in there, and it's actually just even making me think about technology and where we've let things go too far, or where we need to, pull it back in, and also where we can probably give a little bit more freedom. So I'm definitely going to be going home and doing a bit of a technology audit in my home. I loved how Clint talked about that whole idea of coming home and going straight for Jamie. And we do that in our home, and I've seen how when you do model it, it's infectious, and it's so lovely seeing my kids celebrate each other and just be delighting each other that, someone's come home.
It's a great thing to remember to do. We all want to be seen and we want to be significant. And in our busy lives, I think somebody coming home from work or they've been away or something can just sort of slip through and be unnoticed. And I think that as families, it's really good to welcome who's ever just coming in the door and to make a bit of a fuss of them and to kind of be saying everybody is important and we welcome this one, and even to have that playful fight over who gets the first kiss. That's a really lovely way of mums and dads and parents honouring each other, which gives kids just a very safe feeling. These people are loving one another and they're prioritising each other, and we're safe in the midst of that. They're not excluding us. We are part of this beautiful gathering.
Yeah. And that also flowed into what he was sharing about, in those young years. And I think we can all relate when you don't really feel like you've got energy for yourself, let alone for your relationship. You kind of just become two people, sort of butlers to the little ones, and I thought that was really great for him to say, man, it was hard, and we had to have that conversation and make that decision. How are we going to be committed to this and make it work? And he could look at how it could play out, and he's like, I don't want it to play out like that. I thought that was really great to have that conversation, because a lot of us need to.
Yeah, we get so little preparation in a way for how does a relationship survive when you have little people. And we know that having a baby, having a toddler, some people are having 3-4 kids, that children will redirect our energy and our focus and everything. And I think that we do have to pause and say, hang on, are we also taking care of one another? Are we making sure that we have put a time aside for each other? And it's hard to do, but I think that if we don't, there's real suffering when parents feel that they're really moving away from one another because the kids have sucked all the oxygen out. And kids aren't in charge of that. We've sort of got to be in charge of reserving oxygen for the relationship.
Parenting, families, it is magic and it is messy. And here at Parenting Place, we would love to help. So do get in touch, parentingplace.nz.
Rover. Music, radio, podcasts.